Sunday Times reported that President Cyril Ramaphosa held a secret GNU meeting with obviously GNU partners. Now, I trust the Sunday Times. I've got no reason to believe that they would publish anything that wasn't verified, right? But we don't really know, first of all, if this meeting took place, and even if it did, what was discussed. They went on to say that President Cyril Ramaphosa is unhappy about the DA's conduct. So essentially, they've been challenging a lot of what the ANC policies are. And these are not actions you'd expect from a partner. That's the first thing. Then the second thing is that apparently President Cyril Ramaphosa is increasingly unhappy with the challenges, or let's just say people speaking out of turn, specifically ANC stalwarts, right? And I thought to myself, well, this is interesting. And they went on to quote former President Thabo Mbeki by name. Before we get to that, there was also speculation earlier on, well, let's say maybe about 2 months ago, that President Cyril Ramaphosa will not continue beyond next year to be president of South Africa. Or let's just say president of the ANC, and then by that, he won't be president of South Africa. And so the issue now has to be whether or not you believe these three stories and these allegations. Well, the one thing certainly is true, right? That as of late, you have heard from Thabo Mbeki, and the things that he's been saying about the administration of the ANC have not always been positive. So, for example, they launched the African Renaissance podcast last week. And from that podcast, this is what came out. Listen.
This person who's wearing an ANC t-shirt, who's carrying a big ANC title, is not ANC. This is a person who was infiltrated by the old order into the ANC, but now occupies a senior position in the ANC. And what's your task? And the task is to repeat what their handler tells them to repeat. You know, from day one, from 1994, there are people from the old order who said the ANC thinks it has won a war. It hasn't in 1994. The ANC has won a battle, but we will win the war. And they intervened to make sure that they win the war. That's where we are today. The negatives that you see, as you say, that you have a certain period, first 15 years of our democracy, very positive. And the next 15 years, the opposite direction. Why? Why the sudden change? It's because the people were saying the ANC thinks it has won the war. It hasn't. We will win the war. That's the result of that. To put in place your own people and put in place your own programs to make sure that this ANC, which they fought for 100 years, fails. And they are working together with their own people whom they had infiltrated into the ANC, who are now sitting in senior positions in the ANC. And you see it every day. You see it every day. You see, for instance, what's happened to the initiative for a national dialogue. Some people intervene to derail it because they don't want national dialogue to take place. Why? Who is this person who calls themselves progressive and doesn't want the ordinary people of South Africa to get together to say, we, the people, want South Africa to go this way? No, they don't want that.
Now, you see, if you listen to that clip, initially you may wonder, okay, who's he talking about? It could be anybody. But that last bit about the national dialogue, that boils down to specifically him and Cyril Ramaphosa, because they were at loggerheads about how the national dialogue should be carried out. And so for me, it leaves me with no other choice but to believe that he's speaking about Cyril Ramaphosa specifically in that clip. Now, here's the thing. These are things that other people outside of the party have always kind of said about Cyril. But to hear it come from somebody like former President Thabo Mbeki, now you've got to sit back and go, hey, he's got clapeles. Big, big, big things. And so you've got to ask yourself, do you feel like there is a bigger plot now to get Cyril out of the ANC? And would then this secret meeting with the GNU partners be him trying to secure his spot? Because eventually, if this happens, they'll have to go to parliament. And the people that will have to vote are the very same GNU partners that he's sitting with in the legislature. Very, very hectic. I suppose you got to ask yourself, does it seem to you, Kat, like former President Thabo Mbeki is working against Cyril at this point?
It may seem that way. And I hear the former president talking about heavyweights who have a different agenda to what the ANC is.
Yeah.
But in my mind, and when we talk about infiltration of the ANC, I'll never forget the image after now controversial businessman was arrested, Cat Matlala. And there was an image of him sitting at an ANC meeting with glasses on and sitting there with the ANC regalia on.
Yeah.
And you talk about infiltration. Well, the former president is talking about, a different agenda at the top. And I'm thinking there's been infiltration right from the branches, right from the ground ranks.
Well, you are correct. I'm going to say something even more controversial, that's nothing new with the ANC. Even when the ANC was still in exile, the people that would eventually give ANC help were people that were earning money, sometimes in illegal ways. Right? And the reasoning at the time was that we are fighting against an apartheid regime which doesn't respect life, much less African life. And so we will adopt any measures possible and at our disposal in order for us to be successful, right? That's why they even took up arms, for example. So they took illegal routes in fighting what they thought was an illegitimate government.
Yeah.
Now, when all of a sudden the ANC then comes into power in 1994, are you telling me that those criminal elements, the ANC, magically disappeared?
No, of course not.
That's exactly it.
But here's the thing, right? I hear where Thabo Mbeki is coming from. But for me, it's almost coming across as though the ANC, instead of sitting back and saying, you know what, let's be honest with the fact that we have failed the country over the past 30 years. They're trying to make it seem as though there was a third hand in it. There may be a third hand or whatever. But at the end of the day, this to me seems like, when you've been saying to your partner, I am unhappy with your behavior, I'm unhappy with this, and you've been talking and talking and talking. And then finally you bring in the family, right? And the families get together and eventually it gets decided, perhaps this marriage is not working. Then you turn around and say, the family ruined my marriage. You're not coming back and saying, but you know what? I played a role in what has transpired here. Do you get what I mean? I played a role in what has happened here. Had I listened to my wife, perhaps there would not have been a family meeting in the first place.
So I agree with that, except the parts where you make it about one individual. So in your relationship, it'll just be one individual who's in the wrong. Here, it's a group of people. So the ANC is correct to say, hey, some amongst us, we're still trying to do the right thing. The people that ruin this thing are those. So Thabo Mbeki, for example, is not a perfect guy at all, right? But the ANC that he led is very different to the ANC that exists today. Now, you need to decide which one you prefer. That's for you to decide. I can't tell you. No, but it's not wrong to say, guys, Tina, we were doing things differently.
No, I hear where he's coming from, and it's not the first time. Obviously, he's saying these, utterances. I mean, he's in his speech. I think if it's in the 1996 somewhere, he mentioned the exact same thing, and it would make sense because when we're looking at today, how there is mistrust amongst the leaders, how there's a lack of accountability, it shows that from a long time ago, from the foundation, the ANC was compromised when it comes to infiltration. So, and it's been there a long time ago. You cannot say the ANC before was better because the people that entered to act as spies for different parties entered the ANC in that way during the struggle, regardless.
But they weren't given senior positions in the ANC. They were sidelined because you sussed them a long time ago.
So is that the little difference?
That's a big difference.
That they were not given.
It's not a little difference. That's a big difference. Because if, for example, you are not true to the movement, but you're not leading the movement, then your actions are of no consequence. However, if you are not true to a movement and now you're leading the movement, the entire movement has gone rogue.
I believe it was compromised long time ago, yeah.
Let us know what your thoughts are. Give us a shout, 08600000959. Do you feel like former President Thabo Mbeki is literally now plotting against Cyril? Is Cyril right to feel that way, according to the reports that we read on the Sunday Times?
Mbeki lo Cyril abafostanani mina la lelungela ndelela lento lesiqeda ukumamela le kule podcast it means lo muntu lo Mbeki uplot against Cyril since I president bhetakaza yenzele ANC integrate now uyazi ukuthi mana basibona.
Aika, good morning, Sizwe and the team. Whoever he's talking about, it can never be Jacob Zuma, because that man served his 10 years in Robben Island, came back, was not given a house. We even heard General Mkonazi saying he was traveling in a car without an aircon. He's never received anything from anybody, so there's no way he could have infiltrated the movement. He didn't get any shares from any any company, basically. So we must really act definitely JZ is excluded from that list.
Well, so again, if you listen to the clip initially, he could have been talking about Jacob Zuma, but when he went on to speak about people that are currently seniors in the movement, Jacob Zuma's not that. And then he spoke about people that wanted to derail the national dialogue. Jacob Zuma is nowhere close to that. So now that leaves only one culprit.
Sees the world not only about the national dialogue. He mentions the first 15 or so progressively moving forward, and then he mentions the last 9, or he mentions, I think, the latter part of the leadership ANC where it's that also gives it away.
So the question is, do you feel like they are plotting against the current ANC president?
Thabo Mbeki is us, ANC is us. Thabo Mbeki mina ngisayida naye, alright. Usirile uvele unangulalele DA, le GA nuthi nesingazange sayivotela. Hayi, vela kahambe man usirile man. Now thina siyi ANC, uThabo Mbeki right.
How? Senila